Let's welcome our guest today. Well, today's conversation from the Festival of the Sound is with bass singer Kevin Fox. Kevin sings bass, of course, with the Swingle Singers. Now, this is a group with a formidable 50 albums under their belt, 5 Grammy Awards, and it must be about 4,000 live concert performances. The group dates back to 1963, which makes them, I guess, middle-aged. But Kevin, there's no way you're middle-aged.
I look excellent for my age.
Were any of the members, the current members of the group, born when the group itself was born?
That's true. Yeah, we're the new generation, I guess you could say, of the Swingles. There have been several generations over the decades, and so our current lineup is quite young for the most part. Half of us are in our 20s. The other half of us are not.
That's quite a sobering thought for those of us who remember the first LP when it was new, Jazz Sebastian Bach. Home for you, Kevin, is just a short drive through the forests and the lakes and the Canadian Shield.
Yeah.
Were you listening to the Swingle Singers on recordings when you were growing up in Orillia, Ontario?
I was, yeah. I was introduced to the Swingles by a fellow by the name of Ted Duff, who ran a jazz choir, sort of a community-based jazz choir, out of one of the high schools in Orillia. And I was at a different school, but I became involved with that group. It's called Jazzmatazz. And they sang all kinds of repertoire from Manhattan Transfer and Lambert Hendrickson Ross and all that sort of thing, and also the Swingle Singers. So, yeah, that's how I had my introduction to their music some 20-some years ago, I suppose, now. And
this is when you were at high school?
When I was in high school, yeah.
So. Did you tour with the group, or was it for local consumption only?
Yeah, we toured a little bit around Ontario. We made a few trips down to the East Coast as well. So yeah, we had a little taste of what life might be like as a professional, and so it was really exciting and kind of cool to get to do it actually for real later on in life.
It's a good apprenticeship, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was a great apprenticeship. Yeah.
And did you ever dream, or was it your goal of joining the Swingle Singers, or were you in the right place at the right time and had the right voice?
It would never cross my mind. I mean, that was, how could you join the Swingle Singers? That's like, that's like saying joining the Vienna Phil or something. It wouldn't happen. But yeah, I was singing with a different group about 4 years ago in Toronto, a quartet called Cadence, and who have actually performed here. Interestingly, I didn't realize that till I showed up. I'm like, I've been here before. And I was with them for 9 years and then decided to move on. And a friend of mine saw an audition notice for the Swingles online and sent it to me. And I just said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Disregarded it. And then about a month later, he sent me another email saying they still haven't found anyone. Maybe you should. So I thought, all right, fine. So I sent in a package. And long story short, I flew over to London to audition for them. And got the job, and I've been doing it now for coming on 4 years.
I would imagine they don't just sort of listen to tapes and say, yes, that's the man. I would imagine there's quite a long audition process.
Yeah, it was quite a normally there are 3 rounds of auditions. The first round, you basically sing a few songs and they decide if they like your voice. Yeah. The second round, they give you a big stack of music that you have to memorize in about 2 weeks. And then you come into a recording studio with them, and you sing with them in the studio on microphone, and they record you to see how well you've remembered all of the stuff and how much you faked. And it's quite interesting. And then the third round, they give you another stack of music, and you do the same thing again. The idea being, if you get the job, you already know half the show because you've learned. So it's really quite practical. But if you don't get the job, then it's a bit painful. But as an international auditionee, I had to do it all at once. So I didn't do 3 rounds. I basically did it all in one day. So I did slightly fewer pieces than would normally be done. But yeah, so it was a bit of a trying experience. But it was, it turned out well.
Once you signed on the dotted line, what was the biggest challenge that faced you?
I suppose just relocating was a big challenge. Although I found that the move from Canada to the UK wasn't that much of a culture shock. I found it the people are very similar, and just the general vibe of everything is everything looks different, obviously, and they drive on the wrong side of the road and all the rest of it. But the feeling was good, and people are very friendly, and they apologize all the time, the same as we do. So if I kind of felt at home in that respect. But the actual just sort of closing off one part of your life and starting a new thing altogether. And I didn't know anyone really over there at the time, or when I moved as well. So it was kind of leaving everything behind is a bit of a big leap, I suppose. But
how do you find the choreography that the group does? Were you used to that sort of thing?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Actually, I found we did a little bit less choreography in the Swingles than what I had done. So I found it was a big relief, actually, to just get to sort of just stand and sing a little bit. That was quite nice, I thought. But,
What Swingle, who founded the Swingle Singers almost a half century ago, he's now 84. Mm-hmm. I know you've sung under his direction because I saw a video online where you're singing.
Yeah.
Is he very active with the group at all these days, or?
We consider him to be sort of a musical advisor, and basically that means he doesn't tend to be too involved with our day-to-day activities, but he likes to know what we're doing. So we send him, if we have a new program, we send it to him, and if we make a new album and everything, and he just likes to be involved in that way, just to know what's happening. The video that we did with him was a bit of a setup. It was for a particular film that was being shot, and so they set it up as a rehearsal with him. But we have actually, he lives just outside of Paris, and we've occasionally gone down to visit him and then have a bit of a rehearsal, just for fun, really. But it's amazing, even at in his early 80s, he's still completely on top of it, and he catches us on all the things we do wrong, and he's very, very sharp. So. So it's always, you always learn something.
Does the group, you're 8 singers, 2 of each voice, bass, tenor, alto, and soprano. Does the group actually have a music director as such, or is it from within the group?
The group, until about 2 years ago, always had a music director from within the group. It was Ward himself. For the first, I think, 22 years, he sang with the group. And then there were successors for the next few decades after that. About 2 years ago, we decided to try things differently and to rotate the job around within the group, so that there wasn't, basically just to sort of get rid of the hierarchy and the sense of kind of authority within the group. And we found that for us, for this group of 8, it just worked a little bit better. So it means that there's more involvement from everyone, and so we still have kind of a de facto leadership, but it tends to work in teams rather than as an individual. So there'll be 3 of us who essentially do the music direction, but not with any sense of absolute authority. It's all very much a collective and organic process now. So, and it works well for us.
And when you tour, there's 8 of you with a sound engineer, sound designer. Do you have other management touring with you, or is that it? You're on your own?
We tour just with the 9. We have a team of people that help us to make everything happen. We have an agent and an administrative staff in London, and they basically coordinate all of our travel efforts, and they also coordinate all of our other agents. So we have booking agents in probably a dozen other countries around the world where we go a lot.
Yes.
And so our London agent is responsible for making sure that the calendar is full, basically, and he coordinates with all of them as well.
And how full is that calendar? How is that calendar? Are you constantly touring, or do you have periods back in the UK, or?
It depends. We have busy seasons and not busy seasons. I think in a busy year for us is say between 80 and 100 concerts, which by some standards of some bands is not actually that much, but because that involves us traveling around the world, the travel time involved with that is quite extensive. So it's in a not busy year. Well, the last 2 years have been not great because of the whole sort of world economic situation. So down to maybe about 60 or so per year. But this year everything is going well again, and we spent the first three and a half months of this year on the road, pretty much all the time. We made 6 trips to the U.S. between February and June. So that was after at the end of that we had no idea what time zone we were in anymore. So yeah.
Wow. The original Swingle Singers that Ward Swingle founded were a French group, a French-based group. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? He was American, of course, but then all of a sudden the group pops up in Paris.
He was American, but he went to Paris to study music. I think he was actually studying jazz piano there. And he, just through being in that scene, got hooked up with the session singing scene in Paris. And so the original French group were all session singers. So if you hear, a lot of these sort of advertisements and a lot of the films and things that came out in the 60s were the Swingle Singers at the time. And so when they started off, I think they were more or less just a group of friends that decided to get together for fun and try something different. And they literally just got out the well-tempered clavier and just sang through it just to see what would happen. And they discovered through that process that Bach was a bit cool. And that actually, if you could put a rhythm section under it and make it swing. And they thought, well, this is kind of a cool idea. So they recorded, they actually convinced Philip Classic, I think it was Philip's record label, to record this thing that they had done strictly just for fun as a Christmas present for their friends and family. And they did. They recorded this album, and it got into the hands of a DJ somewhere in America who heard this and thought it was it was fairly revolutionary at the time, and played it on the air, and it just spread like wildfire, and they became famous without intending at all to become famous. And suddenly they realized, well,
it was a revolutionary sound.
It was.
I mean, the idea of making voices sound like instruments,
Yeah.
to begin with, but singing the Bach and applying, I guess, the scat singing to it.
It was something somewhere in between sounding like instruments and singing with the intention of the instrument. So it's not specifically that they sounded. I mean, it's hard to sound like a piano.
No.
But they worked out ways to be able to sing. To sort of have the same feeling as all the keyboard music or whatever other instruments they used, but also I think it was a bit of a novelty thing to be able to take, especially with Bach, to take these continuous lines where there are no breaks and say, well, obviously you can't sing that because you have to breathe somewhere. So what they realized is that they could divide up the line among different singers, and with 8 singers, you can do that. You can have. So, for instance, our sopranos will sing the melody line, and they'll dovetail it. So one person will sing this much, the next person sings there, and then the first one drops out, and the next one comes in, so that you get. And when the voices blend, you just get this one continuous line. Yes. So it was that sort of idea that became this thing where they're actually singing as instruments.
Now the sound has necessarily changed over the years just because the voices change and the people change and times change, but the group is very much has its feet in the same sort of soil, as it were, that the original Swingle Singers had. How do you do that? How do you still sound like the Swingle Singers?
Well, I think there's 2 reasons. One is that we still do the music from the 60s. I mean, the original group was not a cappella. They had a rhythm section. And they decided after a while that they didn't need, that it was just, I think they probably just figured it was too expensive to tour with a rhythm section. They didn't need them, and it just turns out that the 2 bass singers took over the role. They slightly tweaked the parts, and then the bass singers became the rhythm section. And that's how it's been ever since. So the part of it is that we still sing some of the music from the original group, even though our show now is quite different. We always try and pay tribute to the original group. And the other thing is, I think, just philosophically, the group at the time, as we said, was revolutionary. They were doing something on the cutting edge, something that hadn't been done before. And so the group that's always been the intention, is to always try and push the envelope and to do something that hasn't been done before. And I think it's because of that intention that, in a way, that's the sort of the spirit of the group, in a way. And that's kind of why we sound that way, I think. Obviously, as part of singing the original repertoire, there is an actual sonic kind of aesthetic that we try to do. I mean, we don't really sing very loud a lot of the time. There's this quality of swingle singing which is very soft because we're amplified very often. If you took the microphone away, you wouldn't hear us at all. It's very, very quiet. So you have this really nice, warm kind of sound that you get. That is a particular thing that we've tried to maintain as well. Although now we have expanded the palette quite a lot. So you'll hear stuff that is more in line with contemporary jazz singing and contemporary gospel and that sort of thing. But we will always come back to that sound as well, somewhere in the texture. So.
And I think you've also expanded the range from the little bit that I've just heard during your rehearsal. It's very, very high.
We have a very big range. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you do some of the arrangements, or you have done some of the arrangements. How does that work? Do you propose a song for the group, or?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. We if we're doing a new album, for example, then that's something that's very much a collective thing. We decide, well, what do we want this album to sound like, and what is the artistic statement, and what songs do we like, and So that's one way that people will bring songs to the table and say, hey, I really love this song. What do you think? Yeah. And then we try it out and see where it fits. And then the other aspect is to actually do something which fits programmatically with the show. So we have basically a show. We have about 3 or 4 different shows that we do. But so the stuff that we bring in has to functionally fit that framework as well. So we have to have fast songs, we have to have slow songs, and all the rest of it to sort of fit the shape of a concert. And then the other thing, way that we write is basically to get requests usually from promoters or from a particular thing. So if they're saying, well, we're doing a Chopin festival, then we'll dig out all of our Chopin, or we'll write new Chopin arrangements, or we're doing a jazz festival, or we're doing, as well as that, we try as much as possible when we travel to different countries to do something from the local country. Usually we'll find a really old folk song from that country. And so that's another reason why how we introduce new repertoire.
And then when you've got the song and you've put it on the drawing board and you come back with your charts, is it then sort of workshopped? Do you get input from all members?
We do, yeah. That's something we're trying to do more now. I mean, rarely, I think, do we come to an arrangement that isn't finished. So the arranger will say, this is the arrangement, and then we sing it. We might tweak it slightly, but we're just now starting to experiment with this idea that, well, maybe we can bring a sketch of an arrangement, and then it depends on what it is, but sometimes that's a really fun way to work through something, and it actually can save a lot of time as well for the arranger to say, well, this is basically the sketch of what I want. Now let's together figure out the exact shape and the form and all the rest of it. And we are discovering that it's quite a fun way to go through that process.
Yeah. How many countries do the members of the Swingle Singers come from?
1, 2, 3, 4 and sort of 5. In a way, we have most of them are English. One of the English people actually grew up in East Africa, so she for most of her childhood. So she's kind of considers herself to be East African in a way as well. And then we have a German. Our low bass is German. I'm Canadian, of course, and our high soprano is from the States. She's from Tennessee.
Okay. Now, speaking of the States, the show Glee, how much has that changed what you do on a day-to-day basis? I know you do workshops and things like that.
The Glee thing was really interesting. I wouldn't say that it has changed so much what we do on a day-to-day basis, but what it has done is raised awareness in a way of this thing that we're doing, this kind of music. And of course, there's many, many groups now, whereas in the 60s, there was the Swingle Singers, basically. Now there are hundreds and probably thousands of groups that are similar to the Swingle Singers and who have been inspired by the Swingles, but still are not have no mainstream exposure. They're still very much a niche thing. The a cappella community is very big, but no one knows about it. So it's the shows like Glee, and there's these competition shows as well, like the Sing Off and these types of things that have suddenly just raise the awareness of this of a cappella music, and suddenly now it's kind of a cool thing as well, especially for younger people, because now you say, well, yes, you know, we had some music that was on Glee. They go, wow, great, you know, brand new audience. Now we appeal now to a younger generation as well. So in terms of how we go forward with that, I think mostly it's just supporting this idea that yes, this is a cool thing, and it's something. Obviously, we've benefited from having some of the tracks from our old, and it was all stuff from previous sort of older albums, mostly. But having that involved, you know, with the Glee show, it just obviously benefits us because we can be associated with it. And I think, yeah, it's just supporting this idea of that, you know, that it's fun, that it's cool, that anybody can do it, that it's not, you know, obviously it takes practice and there's a good deal of, you know, yeah, there's some expertise involved with it, but anybody can do it and everybody should do it because it's fun, you know. So it's been great to see the influence that shows like that have had on choirs, on traditional classical choirs who are now trying to spread out a little bit and do some pop music and do, you know, and suddenly it's drawing in more people into the fold. Suddenly boys are joining choirs and singing because, you know, because the guys on Glee are cool, maybe, I don't know, but, you know, it's all, it really is beneficial in that way.
Is that, has that spread to other countries than the States, North America and the UK? Is it sort of in mainland Europe?
Glee is huge in the UK. I mean, we're about most of a season behind. So most people, well, watch it behind or watch it illegally online, so they can be right on top of it, I suppose. But yeah, it's huge there, and I think it's spread to other countries as well. I think, does Germany have Glee now? Yeah, that's Toby, by the way. He's our little bass. In Italy, it's huge as well. Yeah. And this show, as I mentioned, this show, The Sing Off, which started in the States, and they're now doing test markets in other countries as well. So yeah, I think it won't be long before, you know, there's a huge explosion of all of this.
And do you do one-day workshops with choirs and get them singing alongside you? Is that the idea?
Yeah, we have different types of workshops that we do, yeah, mostly it's involved with just working with them on their own repertoire, but we also have a certain number of pieces in our rep that have choir parts written in so that we can do them with groups, and sometimes we'll workshop with a choir during the day, not just kids, but adult choirs as well, for a few hours, working through stuff, and then they'll join us on stage during the concert, and we'll do it together. And,
wonderful.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Tonight's concert, tonight's program, I've looked through the playlist. It looks like there's a little bit of everything, really. There's some historical stuff and some new material.
Yeah, the show is called, we call it Classic Reinventions, which sort of obviously, you know, implies that there's classical music, and a lot of it is classical, sort of done in this kind of swingle way with some sort of a twist on it, but also not just classical, but classic, so songs that people know. Singer-songwriter type material, and classic also in the sense of just historical, so folk music and this sort of thing. So it's kind of a mixed bag of stuff, but I think there's something for everybody, and hopefully everyone will enjoy it.
I'm glad you're doing Liber Tango, which is one of the Astapia et Sola piece, which is one of your music videos.
Yeah.
It makes me chuckle when I look at that, because the very first thing you see on stage is the caption, "No instruments are used during this video." Do you find that people think that the sounds that you produce have a track of instruments or something?
Yeah, I think maybe this is part of this whole not being in the mainstream awareness thing, and I think we always just assume, well, surely by now people realize that, no, it's all happening live. But still, just about every concert we do, someone will come up to us after and say, okay, seriously, where is the CD player? Where's the backing track? Show me how you do. And we do. We show them, no, it's really easy. We do it like this. So yeah, it's, I think, and to be honest, I think sometimes even we're surprised by, you know, I know that I am. We'll be on stage and we'll be doing a section of the 1812 Overture or something, and you just kind of stop for a second and go, yeah, this actually is coming from us. It's amazing when you know, the sound, when you sort of hear what's out there and you think, wow.
Just wait for the cannons. This gentleman produces the cannon shots.
Yes, there will be loud noises and flashing lights, so just be ready for that. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be fun. How do you like the Stocky Centre behind those walls where you're going to be singing tonight?
It's lovely.
Yeah,
Well, obviously it's a beautiful hall, but it's yeah. I've sung here before, as I mentioned, and I was really excited to come back, or to get to sing here again. It's a lovely acoustic, lovely sound. It's very intimate as well. It's nice to just be on the stage in front of people, but also have the sense that you're just in a room with people and just able to interact and have some fun together. So
yeah.
Okay,
well, I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'll let you go and do vocal warm-ups or whatever you do at this stage of the evening, half an hour before the performance. There's more at swinglesingers.com, and we're the festivalofthesound.ca. So, Kevin Fox, thank you so much for giving us a behind-the-scenes glimpse of the Swingle Singers.
Thank you.